We have with us a brand guru and thinker to throw some light upon the topic today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Harish Bijoor, brand guru and founder of Harish Bijoor Consults Inc. He is a brand thinker and practitioner operating out of Bengaluru, India. He runs a unique boutique consulting outfit branded Harish Bijoor Consults Inc., a brand name that has a consulting presence across the markets of Hong Kong, Seattle, London, Istanbul, Dubai, and the Indian subcontinent. Mr. Bijoor has spent his career across the aggressive realms of FMCG, telecom, and consumer durables. He is a considered and marketing practitioner and thinker who is ahead of the consumer thinking curve year on year. He is a public speaker who speaks to corporate audiences across the globe in the realm of motivation, people management issues, brands, marketing, and business at large. He has spoken to corporate audiences across the world for 15,812 hours to date. Mr. Bijoor teaches at the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad and Mohali, in addition to semesters at overseas business schools in the US and Europe. He has been teaching at the Indian School of Business for the past 20 years. He has recently published a book titled Marketing Trends Smart Insights into the World of Indian Business, a serious book that is written in a style that is distinctly young. He is currently involved in his second book on core branding titled Brand Irrationals, a Fundamental Journey into Brand Think. Mr. Bijoor has simultaneously been commissioned to write a book on customer service mechanisms at play in contemporary marketing contexts. He is actively involved in research relating to rural consumer behavior, rural retail networks, and trade mechanisms at play. The current research exercise he is involved in spans a 6 year period covering 84,850 consumers across India. He has published papers extensively on the subjects relating to strategic marketing, branding, consumer behavior, retail networks, rural marketing, marketing research, and trend analysis. He also contributes regularly to business publications on branding, sales, distribution, and related topics. Currently, Mr. Bijoor is engaged in work on the bleeding edge brand and marketing work related to the metaverse and Web 3.0. Please join us. Welcome Mr. Harish Bijoor.
Just give me a moment as I set this up.
So, while you set up, I have one request to everyone in the audience. Any guesses what that is? Yes, you're so right. Please remember to turn your mobiles on a silent mode.
I'm just getting this to read my pen drive. Just give me a moment.
Mind you, after every session, we are also going to have some time for Q&A. In case you have any questions, we'll have a mic passed on. Please feel free to ask. It will also help us make every session very interactive.
Can you just check? Right. I just put it in. HP. Could I have this on the screen, please? The presentation. Yeah. Thank you. Um, it's an absolute pleasure being here in your midst. And this morning, I'm sure all of you have braved the Bengaluru traffic and have landed up here. It's a pleasure being here because when my good friend Gokul invited me over, I couldn't refuse, and I happened to be in the city this morning. So it is a total delight to be with people from Bengaluru and outside, of course. I'm going to be speaking to you for the next several minutes on the subject which is titled Building the Indian Corporate Brand of the Future. Now, what am I going to be speaking about? I'm going to speak to you about some new stuff that is emerging from the realm of research as far as the Indian consumer is concerned. I'm going to be speaking to you a little bit about advertising, media, and marketing, and some of the approaches that we typically take in this realm, and maybe some correction factors that we might need to incorporate when we go ahead. There's no point in discussing what happened in the past because the past is over and gone. And the present, yeah, we are living through it at this point of time. The future is more exciting. Um, I keep saying power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. And to that extent, I'm totally corrupted by PowerPoint. So you'll have to bear with the PowerPoint presentation. But I've tried to not to make it heavy. It's a very light PowerPoint presentation. Um, I'm going to talk about the fact that, hey, the Indian corporate brand is something important as far as you and I are concerned. The clicker is, do I need to aim it somewhere? Is it on? I have to then take the clicker back. Thank you. Let's kind of, let's go. For a start, what am I saying? I'm saying several things. We are just about emerging from the pandemic shadow. The pandemic cast such a big shadow on our lives. And this is an opportune moment for us to recap some of those points. The pandemic has been a life change event. For how many of you it's been a life change event? Please put up your hands, if at all. Yeah? Yeah? Huge life changes. Literally 50% of the room saying that it's a life change event, and that's big. So if you look at it, we died 2 years too early. And that's for a fact. We have lost 2 years of our life. Let me not mollycoddle that fact. Okay? 2 years went in taking care of the fact that there is a pandemic outside. Everything around us died as well. My outdoor life died, my outdoor friends died, not physically, some of them actually physically as well due to COVID. But then, death was in the air. And when death is in the air, it's very, very negative for business, as you and I have realized. The outdoor world went totally indoors. Everything went indoors. You know, the world was not your oyster. I keep saying this, when I was growing up, my grandfather would call me and give me gyan. And he would tell me, young man, go out there, the world is your oyster. The world is your oyster. I actually, 2 years ago, I started saying that the world is not your oyster, young man. The oyster is your world, and the oyster is your home. Everything started coming into your home. Entertainment, OTT had to come into your home. Food had to come into your home. Grocery, Big Basket and 20 other guys had the biggest sales volume surges and the biggest valuations that they could get from companies which bought into them as well. So if you really look at it, everything went indoors. So the world is not your oyster at all. So if you look at it, we went down the COVID hole. On the top right hand corner, I have Alice going down the hole, the rabbit hole. Like that, our lives went down the COVID hole, only to mushroom again. And that is the beauty of it. And we are mushrooming here today. Literally 99% of you in the audience are maskless. And I think, that says that, hey, listen, and when I said that, a few of you have reached into your pockets and taking your masks out. But the point is, that's the kind of spirit that's come back. Poverty deepened. And this is very important for you and I to understand. We normally don't talk poverty. We talk prosperity. Poverty actually deepened. There is a report which has just come out which says that we have as many as 93 million people actually getting into the poverty trap once again. 93 million people are as poor as they were 4 years ago. Not 2 years ago. Pandemic was 2 years. But 2 years prior to the pandemic, However poor they were, they've gone back to that status. 93 million, that's a lot, nearly a billion. A billion out of a 7.63 billion population of the world, and that's a large population of poverty stricken people. So feel happy that possibly we are slightly above that line. We actually see what we want to see, but as marketers, we must open our eyes to things that we don't want to see as well. And that's exactly what I'm going to try and open our eyes to this morning. Businesses must see more than what anyone else wants to see. And you're a business. You're in media, you're in marketing, you're in sales, you're in advertising, you're in digital. You have to see much more than others. So let's peek at what's ahead. So what is a brand? Firstly, I must start with a brand. And firstly, there are many definitions. Whenever I ask what is a brand, most people say a brand is a name, a brand is a color, a brand is a slogan, a brand is 23 other descriptors. But for me, the brand is a very simple thing. I define it very simply, and this is the title of my new book as well. It simply says, the brand is a thought. The brand is a thought. So people ask me, what is a brand? I say the brand is a thought. And then they say, and? I say, and nothing else. Nothing more, nothing less. The brand is a thought that lives in your and my head. The Taj MG Road is a thought. It is not the physical room out here. It's not the restaurants down there. It's not that bar down there. It's just a thought. Where are you going for this meeting? Oh, this is going to be at the Taj MG Road. Okay, immediately you have a set of sights and thoughts which come into that bubble head of yours and mine, and we say, this is what the Taj is. So what is the Taj? The Taj is a brand, and the brand is a thought that lives in a person's mind. But the complexity is that as many minds as there are, that many different thoughts of the same brand. There are some of you who would say the Taj, oh, it's this old little place in a corner. It doesn't have good parking. It's okay. Some of you might say, oh, it belongs to the Indian Hotels Company Limited, and that belongs to the Tata Group. It is a Tata hotel. I don't know. Different people, different minds, different thoughts of the same brand, and that's the complexity of a brand. Having said that, a simple thought that lives in people's minds is a very powerful thing. A lot of people invest a lot in these powerful things. And what's really happened, however, is brands have gotten indoors all of a sudden due to the pandemic, and all of a sudden brands have gotten people to dig deep into their psyches and discover brands slightly differently. How so? Research is telling, and I've just emerged out of a research exercise which is across 16 different cities in this country, with the 2 test centers, one in Boston and one in Rochester, just to see how the US is very different as far as Bengaluru and our Delhi and our Indores and Barodas are concerned. Research is telling. So this tells me a lot of stuff, and the sample size in this research is about 23,850 people. So this is not anecdotal research. It's real good stuff that went on for about 11 months. It's telling. It's telling the following things, the post-pandemic research. There are 3 ways people consume brands today. 3 ways. One of the first ways is physically, as usual, before you go to a place and consume it. The second is in the mind. Massaging every aspect of the brand to death in your mind. You consume a brand in your mind, but you never buy it physically. You consume a brand which is the latest Mercedes-Benz, an SLB, let's say, which you're actually massaging in your mind continuously, but you don't ever buy, but the brand lives in your head. And it's very important because someday or the other, when somebody asks you, which mark must I buy, you might recommend it to be that mark. You may not have the money, I may not have the money to buy that mark, but I might be recommendatory. The third type of consumption is visual consumption alone. A lot of us are on digital, and digitalism is eating into our heads. How many of you are on Instagram? Please put up your hands. How many of you watch all the reels pertaining to food on Instagram? Yeah, food, drink on Instagram, sex on Instagram, and nobody's putting up their hands. So one person, thank you for being honest. Or were you just tired to put down your hands? Huh? Okay, whatever that was. Okay, we do not eat food physically, but we eat food visually. And guess what? A lot of us cannot eat all the food that you and I want, huh? Because, we got all the lifestyle diseases in the world, and, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. But what do? You eat it, visually. And food porn is, of course, one of the latest things that's going around. Brands have become intrinsic entities, as opposed to purely extrinsic beings. So this is a tough one, because brands belong to those people who don't spend a single paisa of their money on those brands even. So your consumers are people who don't buy your products and services. Now, you have to understand them as well. That's the tough thing. The brand is a friend for sure, and equally an enemy, because many of these people who don't consume you might tomorrow turn against you, and you'll never know that they've turned against you. Society has morphed, my dear friends, and morphed in a different way. Society has crept back into its shell. The snail which is out there, it carries its shell on it. Whenever there's fear around, it creeps back. That's exactly what's happened to you and I and all our businesses. We crept back into our shell, and it takes a lot to come out. The snail in fear syndrome, as I call it. And if you really look at it, global organizations have pushed us into it. The WHO has pushed us into our shell. Governments have pushed us into a shell. Our liberties were taken away for a long period of time. Businesses have scared us to get back into our shell, into what I would really call near social death. Society is at its smallest worst, in the sense that the smallest unit of society is the individual. And guess what's happened? The largest unit of society has shrunk into the individual, and it's over. Society is back. Society has shrunk to its smallest and lowest unit, the individual. And of course, the individual and his family of 4.5 people in the home. The Indian census says we have 5.5 people in an average Indian home. The I, me, myself syndrome is at play. Everybody is about I, me, myself. Outwardly, no. Inwardly, yes. Okay. Society has shrunk back, and if you look at it, strangely, we are more selfish than ever as a society, ever before. 23 cities, 2 test centers in the US, and I'm saying we have become very selfish, and we're becoming even more selfish than ever before. Societal nudges. I was studying societal nudges, and these are my 5. What's happened over time? And this I'll go very quickly. The years have changed. Over the years, society has got nudged differently. The first, if you, there have been many years, and in fact, I listed out about 18 of them, and then I shifted it into 5, crunched into 5. The first way society in India reacted was under the British, a slavish, working for the crown kind of mentality. So we were a nation of servants serving our masters, the crown, and with soft infrastructure like education, everything, pushing us towards that. This is societal passion 1, working for the crown, my sahab. The fight for independence is the second social nudge. If you look at it, a nation passionately fighting for nationhood and supremacy. That was a different one. We fought for something. We were passionate about that. The third one was post-independence. We had just inherited a nation. No, got back a nation. And we wanted to rebuild it. And this was the Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan time, when many of us were not around, but then some of us could have been around. Jai Jawan, Kisan was a very big nara in those days. The ultimate man in those days apparently was Manoj Kumar, working hard in the field, tilling the soil without a shirt, and he was the Kisan. And then there would be shots of the Jawans running around. So if you really look at it, each one of this, the fourth one, at that point of time, it was on Vidhan Saudha in Bengaluru, we have government's work is God's work. We used to respect that, and that used to be the third one. The fourth one is working for the private sector. Suddenly people said in the 80s that I want to work for the private sector. The private sector is the new God. The rise of early individualism came by, and early home selfishness about us came by. The rise of elitism came by in a big way. In schools, elitist Medicare, elitist shopping locales, travel elitism, stay elitism, in luxury, everything was elitism, and we are still around somewhere in that elitism. And the fifth one is the dangerous one, my dear friends. I say, an undoing it of it all. An undoing of it all. What is the opposite of elitism? Whatever the opposite of elitism is the future for a while. So marketers must be careful, and marketers must bridge their offerings, keeping this undoing of it all. Statutory warning to marketers, advertisers, media folk, digital folk, you need to be aware of this and be careful of this. Self-pleasure is here, my dear friends. At this point of time, when I'm talking 23 cities, those two cities outside, self-pleasure is in. And when I talk self-pleasure, you know, that's a very queer kind of a subject. But let me tell you a story. I was just returning from Delhi last night, and I met a person, a friend actually, who was sitting on the seat next to me accidentally, and she was telling me a story. So she was at home, suddenly sitting there at home, and her young son, 10 years old, comes running into the room and says, "Mama, what is masturbation?" What is masturbation? Now, Mama is aghast that a son could ask her this kind of a question. She says, "Go away, get out. Ask your father." And then she mumbles, "Go, check out on Google." And then out he goes. That same evening, they're sitting at dinner. Mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, that's her father-in-law, mother-in-law, and sister. And the young man is actually brought his laptop to the dining table and he's working on it. And then dad asks him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I am doing masturbation. I'm giving myself self pleasure." The idea is that eventually we are becoming a nation which is into self pleasure, to use a polite word. Okay. And this is a worry for us. This should be a worry for marketeers, my dear friends, because a society which believes only in itself and its unit of one is a worry for marketers. When it comes to pleasure, self pleasure remains a norm, and self pleasure is a digital and digitalism reality. A lot of us are locked into our phones, okay, and we never look up, okay. I have classic shots from the New York subway where you know, across 8 days people went around taking photographs. Not a single person is looking outside his or her phone. Everybody is peeping only into their phones. Nobody looks into locking eyes with anyone is a sin, is a crime. It's considered rude, it's impolite. People cannot smile at any other person, full stop, because that's impolite. So if you really ask me, self-pleasure is the only pleasure people know in new society. We are engrossed in it, we thrive in it, society is deep into it at the level of the individual and the family. And if you look at it, we remain a hedonistic society, and yet society is sensitive. A hedonistic society that is sensitive? Sensitive in media terms. And that's what I'm coming to. More sensitive than ever before. Society is very, very sensitive today if you really look at it, but selfish sensitive, vicarious sensitive. The advertising Colosseum is here, you know, Rome is back. What do I mean by that? You know, people would love watching gladiators fighting and dying, animals fighting and being killed, etc. The same thing has come back, only think differently. We are sensitive to stimuli of every kind that comes at us, you know, from every direction. From world organizations, we are sensitive to things that come from governments, whatever they tell us, from marketers, from advertisers, brands, political parties. We are sensitive to each one of these. Whatever they tell us, we listen. And we listen as a mob, not as an individual there. Now that's strange. I've become an individual, but I'm listening as a mob. Well, individual sensitivity is at its sensitive best, and mobs help fuel it on. And society does love hollow pleasure. You know, the self-pleasure society loves hollow pleasure. Watching others suffering. Ouch. This is a sad aspect of what I picked up from this research. Now, this is a tough one. You know, sitting in the gallery pleasure. I sit and I watch and let the fun begin. Because after all, I'm locked indoors. The modern advertising colosseum is here, and the gladiators are the brands in focus and critiques who are around. The examples are many. We have had Galata, okay, all these logos I put up here. We have had the Mintra, the Titan Tanishq episode, where, you know, people went after Tanishq, and Tanishq, they said that they're actually going to stone the Tanishq you know, showrooms, and they're going to hit out at people. They went me on social media behind one poor fellow. Oh my God, that's what people like to do. People like to sit in the gallery and criticize. They're not actual buyers, but they will criticize. The second one, the Myntra logo fracas. If you look at that innocent Myntra logo out there, not only Myntra, but my poor Murugan Idli also got into that from Chennai. You know, it's unfortunate. The next one was the Sabyasachi getting flack. Okay, he went a little berserk, but got some flack. The Dabur Femme Karwa Chauth advertising, I mean, that was bad as well for them. You know, we can't be progressive, can we? Fab India's Jashne Rivaz, so what a lovely looking creative, sad, we got into trouble. And the Manyavar Mohe also got into trouble, and many others have gotten into trouble. I won't go into each one of them. Corporate brands like yours and mine, corporate brands and their consumer avatars of every kind. You know, there's a corporate brand, so there is a mother brand, and then under it are the brands. Each one of them are supporting one another. We live, we experiment and want to thrive. This is a challenging new environment. And in this new environment, brands need to thrive. How will they thrive? Inflation is hitting brand society at one end very, very badly. The dollar is at 80 today. Oil is at a nice record level. And net of it, I think, everything is much more expensive than ever before. At another end, there is expensive society at one end, and there's very sensitive society at another end. What must they do? Corporate brands steer their consumer brands most of the time in markets. Consumer brands, in return, give back to their corporate brands. Life in this track is symbiotic. One gives to the other, and corporate brands need to decide not to nudge society. Corporate brands have been nudging society from decades, if you ask me. I mean, the Tata Jagore was possibly, one of the first ones, and then, of course, there have been many others. My view is, don't nudge society, not yet. Woke is not for India as yet. We like to sleep, let us sleep, let us be, don't attempt woke in India. There was a time for it, that is, there was the Jagore time, and there will be a time for it in the future, but that time is not yet. It will come. My end mantra to the corporate brand typically is, the brand is a commercial entity, my dear friends. This is very important for us. It's a commercial entity. Your stakeholders are essentially commercial stakeholders at one end. People who are with you are commercial stakeholders. At one end, right up to the market. At the market, you have consumer stakeholders. Now, there are two stakeholders. You need to cater to the consumer stakeholders and not to the stakeholders at the top. In sheer number terms, the consumer is much, much ahead. And I told you one important thought is that your consumer alone is not your consumer. Your non-consumer is a bigger consumer of yours than your consumer. So you have to be careful. So listen to the consumer, my dear friends. And out here, listen to the lowest common denominator consumer. Don't listen to the highest common denominator or middle common denominator. There's no average consumer. Your consumer is the lowest common denominator consumer who is out there in the market who doesn't buy you. Okay? That's a different definition of consumer. In many cases, this is your non-consumer, the lowest common denominator. Non-consumer is important. Listen to the society if you want to thrive in it. And listen very, very carefully to people who are looking at you. And do that, essential grassroots pre-check. I keep getting invited by different companies to be on a part of their advertising review committee, which means they give you about an hour and they want you to judge whether this will fly, this will not fly, what's wrong with it, etc. Brand critique has become a business revenue model for a lot of people. You can become one of them for a lot of people because you're at the grassroots level. At the end of it, never ever be that agent of change, which a lot of people told us, you must be agent of change, brand, marketeers, advertisers. No, yeah. Let's get to the brass tacks and say, brands are not agents of change. I know you don't like to hear this, but brands are not agents of change. For now, in curly brackets, for now, okay? Your time will come. If you look at it, touch the sensitive subjects. Should you not? My view is you should not touch these two sensitive subjects. One is religion. Don't touch religion at all. Religion, society, anything that's related to religious society, anything that's related to custom, anything that's related to, history, just don't touch. Not your business. Politics, again, don't touch. we singe our fingers when we touch politics. Stay away from it. And the corporate brand is not a social change agent as yet. Your time is not now. In conclusion, this is what I keep saying on all my television programs all the time. The business of business is business. The business of business is business. Mind your business. Don't get out of that cozy business which you're looking after. Your time is not now. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here, and I've completed my time. Thank you for your patience, your time. I'm not sure if I'll have time for a Q&A, but if I have time for a Q&A, you know, let me see if I have time for a Q&A. Yeah, I have about 5 minutes for a Q&A, if there are any questions. If not, I've left an email ID out here, and you can look at it and take it from there. Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question here, sir. So anybody has a question, you can raise your hand and we'll send you a mic.
Yeah.
Hi, Harish. This is Saraswati here.
Hi.
We talked about brands not being woke.
Yeah.
And the time is not now. Don't you think it's in India because the brands are not investing in the cause?
Yeah.
Right? They tend to come out only for a message,
Yeah.
whether it's supporting the transgender, lesbian relationships, pride.
Yeah.
Brands have not gone the mile in investing and actually working on the ground.
Yeah.
And hence it comes across as fluff.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't get your name.
Saraswati Anand?
Yeah, Saraswati, absolutely bang on, because, brands, if they have to participate in society, they have to first invest in society. You can't get into society and say that I want to reap society. I want to, shave stuff off society. Extremely critical to invest. So brands, typically in the woke sentiment, if you look at any woke case which has worked, 6 years of pre-investment in society, societal development, cause development, that particular cause development, and then harvest it. Like a brand advertiser and a marketer is a guy who sows a seed and then waits for it to come up and then you harvest. But no, here we're going to harvest others' crops, and that's bad. Thank you for that. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Hi Harish, this is Ramesh Putana.
Hi.
You just happened to mention your research. It revealed that the society has become more selfish. Would you think that that's going to stay?
Yeah. The sad thing is, I mean, this is fresh off the works. It's just about a month and a half. We are still analyzing stuff. We had a rider question on all these people to say, how long are you going to stay selfish? And the answer is stunning, shocking, etc. Okay. As much as 43% of people say they're going to be selfish forever. Another 12% say that they were always selfish. This is nothing new. You add the two, it's 55% of society which is out there. The rest, 45% of them, I mean, the rest of them, whatever that comes by, is actually saying, I might change in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. We took it only up to 6 years. So we asked people, are you going to change in 6 years? And 6 years is for me forever, okay? And the answer was no by 45% of people, which is a large portion. So that's the sad thing. So marketeers must be catering to selfish new society. Yeah. Any other question? Okay, folks. Thank you. Such a pleasure.
So there's
being
one here.
Yeah, there's another question. Yeah. I'm sorry you guys started late, so I will have to crunch on my question time.
Good morning. I have small questions that a brand as a company happy to brand. The brand doesn't reach the non-consumer. Might be company people to the person who's hired for a brand as a brand manager and the agency who hired for a brand take care of the brand for they would never reach the penetration of the lower what your non-consumers because they go for 1 or 2 1 2 4. अच्छा भैया हम ले लेंगे मेरा काम है 1 to 4. They won't go to lower level like 3 4 5 6 as a media houses. That's my question. If they are educated or not, they are not unable to take, they want to take the risk for to go to the 3 or 4. This, for example, we had in Karnataka, we had a small incident. The consumer went to the showroom of Mahindra. They thought because of his appearance, the manager, the brand manager, whatever the store in charge has rejected his, no, his sales. Then the Mahindra chairman has to come and on a Twitter and explain and address the issue. That's my question. Either a company has to take care of that, and the agency which is catering the client has to penetrate that.
Okay, I didn't get your name.
Rizwan.
Rizwan. Rizwan, good question. If you really ask me, as far as people are concerned, extremely important to one, be sensitive that your consumer is much bigger than you are defining him or her or them to be. The definition of the consumer is varied, okay, which means to say we used to narrowly define consumers in the good old days. There used to be something called the target segment with age group 25 to 32. How do you define sharply? Attitude is this, usage is this. All that is nonsense as of today. Those of you who still believe in consumer target segmentation of this kind of a thing, or whether you can actually target a segment, target a consumer, segment a consumer, or you're totally wrong. The only thing you can do is you can position to your brand to a consumer. Therefore, the important thing is extremely critical for you to ensure that, be sure that if you're in a mass brand and you're advertising on mass media, make sure that whatever you're advertising to your consumer, your lowest common denominator consumer, your non-consumer, the lowest common denominator non-consumer also. You're addressing society, because media is touching society. Media is of many kinds. The first kind of media is mass media. Mass media is touching society. It's going on television. Television is watched by everyone. And everyone has a stomach and a bladder, and if you're advertising food, everyone loves to see what is being advertised out there. So you're not advertising to your target segment, you're advertising to society. And if you say something nasty which society doesn't like, or woke as we call it, or we used to call it, people don't like it. Want to do you woke, want to do stuff like that, do it on digital. Even there, be careful, because television has a way of grabbing digital bites and saying this is what they're doing on digital, and they'll go after you. So extremely critical to be sensitive to the target audience. If there's a farmer who doesn't look like he's got money, he lands up at your showroom, well, be open to welcoming him. Essentially what's happening is branding, marketing, advertising, PR needs to get much more inclusive than ever before. Elitism is out of the window. Brand elitism is out of the window. Advertising elitism is dead. PR elitism needs to die. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. Okay, folks, such a pleasure being here. Thank you. Look forward. Bye.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll request you just another minute on stage, please. I'd like to request Mr. Sounder Kannan, Managing Director of Naga Foods, to please join me on stage and hand over a memento to Mr. Harish Bijoor. So we have a souvenir for you from medianewsforyou.com and a wellness gift from Medimix. Let's hear that from Mr. Harish Bijoor. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. Thank you so much, sir.